This tutorial is for Andrea Mowry's Free Your Fade Shawl. It's a great beginner pattern available on Ravelry. Here's gorgeous Vivian wearing the sample shawl in her beautiful backyard. The shawl starts with a simple cast on and uses increases and decreases to expand into a crescent-shaped shawl. It uses yarn overs to make decorative eyelet rows and ends with a gorgeous Picot Bindoff. One important technique used right away is the slip-one with yarn in front. Slip the first stitch purlwise, then bring the working yarn to the back for your knit stitch between the two needles, and then continue on with the next stitch in the pattern. I'll show you what this does for the edge later, but for now, remember to bring the yarn to the back between the needles after you slip that first stitch. You'll need to know how to knit 2 stitches together as a decrease, which is just what it sounds like. Just simply knit 2 stitches together, decreasing them into 1. You'll also need to know knit front, back, front, increase. You knit into the front, flip your needle around and knit into the back of the stitch, and then bring your needle back around to the front and knit into the front of the stitch, knitting into 1 stitch 3 times. You can see we've made 3 stitches out of that 1, increasing it by 2. One more time for those 3 techniques. Slip the stitch with yarn in front, bring the yarn to the back between the needles. Here's knit 2 stitches together, decreasing by 1. And here's knit front, flip the needle around to the back, knit into the back of the stitch, and bring the needle to the front, knitting into the front of the stitch, increasing the stitch by 2. Keep following the pattern, alternating between the right side and the wrong side instructions. Your work will grow quickly and you'll be spending less time on these end techniques and more time in the middle doing this relaxing garter stitch. Before you get too far along, I strongly recommend you mark the right side of your work with a locking stitch marker. You just slip it on through one of your knit loops, and now you know the right side from the wrong side that doesn't have the stitch marker on it. If you don't do this, you can end up with something that looks like this. The crescent was growing nicely in this direction until I switched right side and wrong side, and then it started growing in the opposite direction. You can even put a bunch of stitch markers all over the front side, making it super easy to distinguish right side from wrong side. Now let's talk about the slip one with yarn in front edge technique. You can see here, this makes a really nice edge. The stitches along the edge are super smooth, they're elongated a little bit, and make for a really nice edge. It is super easy to do this incorrectly by slipping one with yarn in front, but then grabbing it around the back and making your next knit stitch. Here you can see what that does. It's done correctly here at the bottom. Things are going along nice and the yarn is coming between the needles after the slip stitch. And then here I'm grabbing the yarn from the back and it's cutting off that nice smooth edge. Now let's talk about these decorative holes in the pattern. They're created with yarn overs, which is a super easy technique. You just knit according to the pattern's directions, and then when you get to the place where it calls for a yarn over, you just bring your yarn to the front of your work and knit from there. In this case, the next stitch is a knit 2 together. So now you can see, because I knit it from the front, I've added this yarn over here with a little hole below it. So here's a regular knit stitch, and now I'm ready to make my yarn over. So I bring my yarn to the front and carry on with the knit 2 together. I did all of these yarn overs as single yarn overs, but if you want to do the triple yarn over in the pattern, you just knit up until the triple yarn over spot, then you bring your yarn to the front and loop the yarn around 2 more times for a triple yarn over. And then you just carry on according to the pattern's instructions. Now we're on the reverse side, the wrong side, resolving the yarn overs. There's a yarn over. We're going to just knit it as a regular stitch. That was just a single yarn over. Now we're going to knit along another single yarn over, just knit as a regular stitch. The single yarn overs are super easy to resolve. You probably might not even notice that you're doing it. Here is a triple yarn over, which you're just going to knit that first part as you did the single yarn overs, and then let these loops fall off the needle. It can be a little messy, which is why I didn't love the triple yarn overs. It's an option, total maker's choice. Do a single, you could do a double, do a triple. Here's resolving the triple again. Just knit into that first part and let the yarn overs fall off. Here's what it looks like after I've knit along a little further. You can see the triple yarn overs are larger and the single yarn overs are smaller, just alternating here. Another super helpful thing to know how to do in this pattern is to read your knitting and be able to count your garter stitch rows. So here you can see you've got your yarn over row with your knit stitches in there. You can see the knit V's, and then you can see the purl bumps from the wrong side row. So knit V's, purl bumps, knit V's, purl bumps. So that's the right side, wrong side, wrong side rows. So you can count those easily by going 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. So I've knit 18 rows since the eyelet row. This is super helpful in allowing me to know when I want to start a new eyelet row, and it allows me to not have to count all of the stitches on the needle, which towards the end of the shawl gets to be quite a few stitches to have to count. Fading in a new color can seem intimidating, but it's actually super easy. You just pick up your new color and start knitting with it. Here, our first stitch is a slip stitch, and then the next stitch in the pattern is a knit 2 together, which I'm going to do with my new color. I just simply pick up the new color and start knitting with it. That is all there is to it. Here you can see the tails on the back side that leaves. Here's the old color, which you might need to tighten up every once in a while just so it doesn't slip out. And the new color of the silver. Here's the tail. You want to make sure you leave yourself a long enough tail that you can weave it in later when you're doing your finishing and it doesn't slip through and escape, causing your work to unravel. So that's changing into a new color. Once you've added the new color of yarn, you're just going to alternate between the original color and the new color as you fade in the new color. This is super easy. You just leave both strands of yarn at the beginning of the work and you pick up the one that you want to use. So here I just finished with the silver. Now I'm going to pick up the copper and just knit down and back with that. And then when I'm ready to, I can just drop the copper color and pick up the silver. It makes a really nice fade in of your new color. Now let's talk about the Picot Bindoff. It's a gorgeous finish to the shawl, provides really nice detailing at the end, and it's super easy and fun to do. You just stick your needle in between the first and second stitch, wrap the yarn around the needle and pull it through, then twist it onto the needle for another stitch. You do that twice. This is called a cable cast on. And now you're ready to do the bind off. So you just knit 2 as you normally would to start a bind off, and then bind off 1. Now you continue with the knit 1, bind off your second stitch, knit one more, bind off your third stitch, knit one more, bind off your fourth stitch. Now we're going to put that back onto our needle and start the process all over again. Poke in between that first and second stitch, wrap your yarn and pull it through, and now twist that back onto the needle and do it one more time. 2 cable cast-ons. And now we're going to do the cast off, which just starts with knit 2, cast off 1, knit 1, cast off 1. Keep following this pattern until you get to the end. This is another place in the pattern where you could make some adjustments if you want. For example, you could bind off 6 stitches in between the cable cast-ons, and this would just increase the space between the little points. This is a pattern that greatly benefits from blocking. I strongly suggest you block it out, pulling out the little points to really enhance the detailing and show off the edge and the eyelets made by the yarn overs. And that's Free Your Fade. I think it's a really fun knit. I hope you found this video helpful and enjoy making your Free Your Fade shawl.